Welcome to another episode of the OG podcast. Today, I am here with David Camacho, and I am thrilled to have this conversation. It's going to be packed with value on why the job search process is broken. And David is the perfect one to walk us through this because he's literally seen it all over the last decade. As a talent acquisition leader, he's hired them all from top to bottom across the country, and it's evolved so much, and he's seen it, as had a front row seat to see exactly how much this has changed. So David, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to shed light on this issue.
Thanks, Liv. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's just start with what I am finding to be the biggest issue right now. It's the tale of two job markets, right? So from the employer side, we're hearing we can't find the right people. There's not enough good talent. And then on the job seeker side, they're saying it's the worst job market they've seen in over a decade. What is your take on this?
Yeah, so there are there are a lot of reasons why this is happening. So for employers who are having a hard time finding specialized talent, they may have niche roles in their organization. So the ones that are probably the most challenged right now are healthcare, certain government roles, hospitality, and then roles where really they're not a livable wage or income because these are hourly employees. They're having a hard time finding talent. So it's either the hourly employees or the really specialized skill sets like generative AI, machine learning. Those people are very hard to find. There's only a handful of them. But there's reasons why in those different categories. It's either because they're very specialized or simply it's not the work that people want to do right now. They would rather work a gig economy job, control how they work, when they work through third-party apps versus work for an employer where they're simply not making enough.
So tell me this. Why do you think everyone is feeling absolutely just jaded and powerless? Like they're lucky to have a job. And, not even too long ago in COVID, it's like everybody was quitting. And now it's like everyone's just clinging to their job. What are you seeing out there in terms of people? Like, is it really possible to get a good job right now? Like, from your perspective, what do you think?
So during the Great Resignation, in 2021, a little bit of 2022, before all these layoffs started happening in tech, you could get 4 offers. People were getting hired in the process of the interview. I was having people throw offers at me in the context of one interview. It was like, okay, great. When can you start? It now is not the case. First, we saw this huge amount of layoffs occurring in tech. They were over leveraged. Everybody was over hiring, but now it has spread into other business sectors that aren't as specialized or don't have really competitive compensation. It's really just spread to all business sectors with the exception of government, healthcare, construction, and a little bit of hospitality, depending on what the role is. So, I mean, there's a number of reasons why that's so hard to find a job. One of the reasons is that employers talk about people not having the skills to do new jobs, to keep up with emerging technology. One of the reasons why they don't have these skill sets is because the companies who need these skill sets, they're not investing in them. In fact, when I talk to candidates who are working or unemployed, they know that there's a skills gap there, but also if they're working and they're looking to move on, even though they're very hesitant to because of the volatile job market, they're leaving. One of the foremost reasons is because they are not being invested in. There's no growth opportunity. There's no investment in their skills. They can't get investment in a certification. While at the same time, the employer is saying, hey, let's do more with less. I need you to be able to do X, Y, and Z because technology and industry is changing so fast. So it's really a catch-22, but at the end of the day, it's really an age-old story. Companies don't want to invest in people as much as they should to cover that skills gap. Yet at the same time, they're going, where are the talented people to keep my business moving forward in the future, to keep up with technology? I actually had somebody tell me this week, I think it was yesterday, where they were talking about, they were in a leadership role and they said, okay, I want to have these people get all of their PMP certifications. So these are project managers, right? And it's like, can you imagine if we had this team where all these people were certified and we leveled up and we invested in them, and it would only cost several $1,000s. And leadership of the company said, no, no way. Why? That's too much money. Why would we do that? Well, because these people will manage resources and finances more efficiently, which will help us save and make money at the same time. So really, companies still have this problem where they're afraid to invest in individuals and they're biting their nose off to spite their face in terms of managing cost. So they're laying people off because it's a quick way to say, hey, we're profitable, or to cut their losses. But then they're also not willing to invest in the employees that they do have to make their business profitable. And so people who are there still, if they haven't been laid off, are looking for a new opportunity in a company that will invest in them.
This is huge. And, I always like to hear from a more objective perspective because I tend to be an eternal optimist, as the CEO and founder of Career Evolved. Even in COVID, everybody said it was hard. They said it's hard now. It seems like no matter what time, it's hard. So the way I look at it, it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, though, there's also a lot of opportunity, right? With remote work, it's like you can target the whole country now. It's never been easier to target an abundance of companies. So what's the truth from your perspective? Because obviously I believe there's an abundance, there's the hidden job market, everybody talks about it, but what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So as far as remote work goes, even before COVID, when I began to work with companies that were more forward looking in terms of what will the future of work look like, because they were challenged by the gig economy. At that time, this was about 6 years ago, it was targeted to grow to 50%. About 35 to 40% of the American workforce was already participating in the gig economy. One, because they want to control how much they make and they want to control their time. And so with remote work becoming more and more of an option, again, before COVID, before March of 2020, companies that were really savvy knew that there were some operational roles that didn't require people to be hands-on and on-site that they could hire remotely. And so those are my favorite to work with because now my talent pool is opened up to the contiguous United States, maybe even beyond on that, depending on what it is. So they had access to better talent, more qualified talent. Now, when the rest of the world opened up as a result of COVID, to hire because they had no choice. And they're like, well, we're all working remotely for the most part. Um, what can we do? Well, they're hiring remote jobs now. And so they found out that operationally across the entire business, with the exception of anybody who had to be on the front lines operating equipment or making equipment, they could hire anywhere within the United States. And again, sometimes these were overseas. I've managed dispersed teams remotely across the globe. So there really isn't any limit depending on what it is that you need to do. So there is always talent out there, but because people have pulled back to this return to office arbitrarily, it is, in my opinion, they've really have shot themselves in the foot, if I can put it plainly, because now they only have the talent that is geographically within their means. And here's the other thing too: when I talk to employers and say we're having a really hard time hiring in this specific geographic location, maybe it's the city, maybe it's the commute, maybe it's the cost of living. So the talent they want, one, they're not going to pay enough to operate and live in that city or even to get to it. And so they only have what is living there in the city. Why? You're not going to pay a relocation either. Okay, now your pool got even smaller. So now what happens is businesses are stealing from their neighbors, especially if they're in the same industry. You have to take from someone next door. That means that now you have to pay more. It's either a pay now or pay later. You either invest in your employees, you have a remote infrastructure where possible to access talent, or you're going to pay through the nose to get the best of the best. You're going to have to steal them from your competition. You're going to have to pay for relocation. There is opportunity, and it is still competitive for the candidates, even to their advantage if they are really sought after talent. And that, again, depends on the industry and the profession that they have. But there's lots of opportunity out there. But it is a really pay now or pay later. You're either investing in the people that you have, you're upskilling them, you're offering growth opportunities, or you're paying for the next person to come in the door. So that means you're going to have an increase in salary that you weren't budgeted for. You're going to have to pay for relocation if you can't find that talent locally. And if you don't, I also talk to employers like, I can't do any of those things. Okay, so what are you supposed to do now? You can't hire.
So this is just fascinating because most people, in my world that are really on the job market that need our help, with Career Vault, I'm just confused because it's like they say there's no opportunity and they're just feeling like a commodity because hundreds of applicants are hitting any one opportunity, especially these executive level ones within 24 hours. So it's got them feeling absolutely hopeless. What's your take on that situation?
They're all playing a losing game. And this is really hard for people to hear. So I show up in different places in my own community, with colleges, with business professionals, chambers of commerce, and different organizations. And it's still this tale, as you said, tale of two job markets. Employers can't find talented people can't find jobs. Well, one of the reasons is the oversaturation in the job market, but specifically how it comes into the talent funnel or the application process. It is overloading the bandwidth that an employer or their hiring team has to manage it. They're not going to look at 100 plus resumes unless they absolutely have to. And frankly, a lot of them know that they don't. But at the same time, they are going through all of this noise, and I like to call them spam edits, meaning there's always been some amount of unqualified people applying for jobs that they absolutely shouldn't because they don't align with the skill sets or the qualifications. But now you have people who are unemployed who are also competing for that. And the problem is that you cannot break through to an opportunity because you have to jump through so many hoops. You have to go through the multi-step. Even if it's an easy apply, there are things that you're not going to get past. And I'm not talking about the AI boogeyman or the ATS. There are specific things that you're answering, like your compensation is not within the range that they're paying, so you're not going to get through to them. If you get through all the criteria and the questions you answer, even if it's an easy apply job, you still have to sell yourself to a recruiter or an HR professional, and they may not be the people to understand your skill set. And for the higher level you go, especially if you're talking about senior leadership, whether that's managers, senior managers, directors, especially a C-suite, those people, no offense to my recruiter colleagues, most of them are not trained or educated in what that person does. They may specialize, but the reality is that there's only one person who understands the business problem of why they're going to hire at that level for that specialization. And it's not the recruiter and it's not the HR professional because it's above their pay grade. The things that leadership says to themselves are not things that they will share with HR or recruiters. So by going into the application process, you're really just getting in line and hoping that somebody's going to talk to you or even see your resume. There's no AI tool or a resume service that's going to push you through because really you're still getting in the same line. If you want to talk to somebody who has a business problem so you can solve it, you need to find a way to connect with them in the real world.
I think this is really important. So I want to emphasize this because you're putting hours and hours and hours and hours just to submit all these applications to maybe get a call back from a recruiter who's a gatekeeper. And from my experience, like you leading these recruiters, they've got like 40 to 50 job requisitions they're responsible for. So they're not going to really be that in tune with any one role typically. From my experience, it's just kind of like shove people forward as quickly as possible, and they're kind of going through the motions when it comes to assessing, do you match these perfect bullet points on this job criteria? So if you're not a perfect fit, you're pretty much screwed, right? If you're trying to pivot industries, you're trying to, reinvent yourself, break through to the higher level, like it's just mission impossible. So we cannot say this loud enough. It's just a losing game. It is the career slot machine. You cannot get, especially a six-figure job that you love this way. It's like you're playing really a gamble at this point with your career. So from your perspective, obviously, you're in this business, why do you think most of the best jobs are not posted?
Because people, especially in an employer's market, are reaching out to all of my executive colleagues. They all tell me the same thing. We want to talk to the people that we've worked with, that we trust. We know the quality of their work, especially as it gets more specialized. And right now, because they can be so particular, they have raised the bar on expectations, right? And if they don't know you, you're not top of mind. I actually had an executive tell me this earlier this week because I was looking for perspectives outside of my own. And one of the reasons why you need to be talking to decision makers is because they don't have the bandwidth to look at your resume. They're not even the ones doing it. They need to speak to somebody who they trust, they know the quality of their work, and that they have a rapport with to get a conversation going. You have a better chance of doing that than going through the application process. And I know that because I've built them. I've implemented some of the largest ATSs in the world that everybody uses when you're applying to them on LinkedIn or through some other job board like Indeed or ZipRecruiter. Those processes, and this is really hard for people to wrap their mind around, and I've shared this in my own LinkedIn feed, those processes are not built for you. They are
No.
a talent. It's literally called the talent funnel for a reason. It's their funnel. It's for them to take in information, meaning your resume, and then they'll look at it if they can, if they have to, if they want to. The other thing that's happening too that people aren't really talking about is that a lot, and I've been on the other side of this hiring table as well. There are a lot of jobs that are posted and they're not being managed for the same reason your resume is not getting viewed. They simply do not have enough administrative support or enough people or the bandwidth or even the focus or priority to manage these job postings. So there's a lot of jobs out there people are calling ghost jobs. What it actually is one, people who are building their talent funnels, meaning companies, to prospect for resumes. Now, you actually can't do this in certain countries because it's data collection and it's against the law, but in the US, you can. So they have these open jobs collecting data for their talent funnel if and when they need it. The other thing is that administratively, they don't have the bandwidth, as you said. They have multiple recs, numerous ones, and they only have like 1 or 2 recruiters, maybe 5, unless they're a really large organization. But everybody's cut back on their talent acquisition budget and people. They cannot manage all the jobs. So they're actually floating around out there. They haven't been taken down on the job boards. You're applying to them, and then you're just hoping that someone's going to respond to you when they're not even thinking about it. It's not on their radar. They're not interested in talking. I actually talked to a CFO, and I said, hey, I noticed that the HR person's job that I just spoke to, this was last October. I said, I noticed that you posted their job. Are they still there? Because I just spoke to them last week, and I sent them the link. And then immediately after I sent that email, the person contacted me and said, oh my gosh, I'm packing my boxes. I'm leaving. I can't believe they're posted my job. Nobody posted it. It was being scraped by another website and it got reposted. So this person thought that they were losing their job,
Wow.
but it's because nobody was managing the jobs that they had posted in the past, and it got picked up by another website, posted without their knowledge. I happened to catch it. So people are managing their resources in terms of the job posts or the administrative part. They don't have the bandwidth to look at resumes. They're also prospecting, building their talent funnel. And those are some of the reasons that people aren't talking about as to why you're not getting seen, which is why if you really want a job and you're a senior leader or an executive, do not get in line with everybody else and all of that other noise. You're not going to get seen for those reasons.
Yes, there's so much broken there, and I think it's so important to shed light on this issue because it just leaves people feeling completely powerless. So, with this AI, and I think it's a new buzzword, AI is the new thing, and a lot of folks I keep seeing think there's some special AI tool that can make their resume be the magical tool that'll shoot ahead of the line, and it's like they're still playing the wrong game, right? In my opinion, the resume is dead. I'd love to hear your take on this, like AI resume, magic bullet, AI applications, all of that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that AI is great as a tool. It depends on how you're using it and why you're using it. Now, I think the resume is an outdated thing for getting a job. It just is. It doesn't capture everything that you're trying to say, which is why these AI tools are being utilized to save yourself time, really. Because how many times can you reasonably update a resume or any other document to conform to someone else's job description?
Yep.
The time and energy behind that, AI is a tool for efficiency. So I get why people are using it. The problem is that you can update it all you want. And I've had candidates come to me, said, I've updated my resume endlessly. I have a tool that automates that. I've paid for it. And it does what it says, meaning it will change your resume and it will match it up with the job description. But if the job descriptions, the job postings aren't being managed because they don't have enough internal resources, they're not looking at the candidates coming into the candidate pool, you're still doing the same thing. You're still playing a losing game. You're putting your document into a funnel that's never going to get seen or reviewed because you don't know if the job is valid. if they're actually still looking. A lot of headcount too right now, and for the past 2.5 years, a lot of that headcount gets pulled. So people will actually get all the way to the end of the process, to the offer stage. I have personally had to rescind many job offers. The person went through 3 to 4 interviews and panels, had the offer in front of them, and they're like, let me think about it. I'm going to negotiate on this. And then they came back to me the next day, said, here's what I want. I'm like, I'm sorry, the job's closed. Like, we're actually not going to even hire anymore. And they're like, oh my gosh, I should have just accepted it. That's happening to so many people. My own cousin just got relocated for a very large tech company. He'd been with them for, I think, 7 years right out of college. I'm not going to name them, but you're probably driving around in one of their vehicles. Got relocated across the country and then got a lease, got into a home, and woke up to a termination email.
Wow.
Like they didn't know they were going to let people go, and they let him move all the way across the country. So these things are happening. AI is not going to solve this problem for you. You really need to have a relationship, a rapport with somebody who is in the position to hire you. Efficiency doesn't matter if you're, actually, since I'm kind of implying this anyways, Elon Musk said something that stands out to me and it's kind of just hung with me. He said, people often make it a point to optimize something that should not exist. You're optimizing your resume with AI, and for what? It's going to get you the same result. And the other thing is too, let's just talk about the reality, the emotional aspect of hiring somebody. The question I always ask executives, senior directors, hiring managers at any level is, okay, I have your job description. What is not on this document that is a deciding factor for you to hire this person? There is always an answer. And it's always something they can't say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some intangible about a person, their profile, how they want them to work with them, how they want to interact with people. There's always something.
Exactly. And this is my take, because this makes me so upset. And it's part of the reason and purpose behind Career Vault is we want to raise the consciousness of how people are making their career decisions. And they're missing the point that you want to be aligned to the mission, the values, and the culture. And AI is not going to be looking at that. So what you're really saying when you're using a robot to do all the work for you is you just want a job. You actually don't want to get to know and understand and build trust and relationships. And that's who you're going to be spending the majority of your life with. Like, that just doesn't even make sense to me.
AI does not have the ability to understand human intention either. It only, at this time in history, only knows how to align data with data. But it doesn't know why you're doing it. It doesn't know what your intent is behind hiring that person. It doesn't know the emotional aspect of your decision-making. All it knows is that you gave data in the job description, and this is data out, meaning what application lined up with it. And that's presuming that people actually are looking at it, because at the end of the day, it's not AI. It's a human being on the other side of the ATS or the job board looking at the resumes going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So your AI tool that you paid for your resume is not circumventing the human element. There's still a human there managing or not managing that job, and you have to get past that. You have to get to a decision maker.
So I want to touch on something, because this is so common when people are getting rejected over and over again.
Yeah.
They're like, maybe I just need to go back to school and get an MBA. That's the first thing they want to do, go spend like 80 grand on an MBA. And you can tell my reaction, but what's your take on this?
Well, let's not base what I'm going to say off of my own opinion or yours. Have you seen the news lately? Have you looked at job descriptions or job boards lately? Experience or educational equivalent. Now, are there institutions that still require you to have a degree of some type, bachelor's or MBA or a certification? Yes, but it's already hit the news just in the past month alone. Less and less companies are requiring that. They're looking for more experience. If you go to Google's website, they have Google University. You can learn any number of skill sets to land a job at that organization or others. And the reason why they provide it for free is because they're making that investment to upskill the general public who is motivated and interested to do so that they have a new job skill that makes them marketable. But what they didn't have to do was go to university, go into crippling debt, which is the other reason why, or like, I I need this, but I need a job and I need money. How on earth am I going to get funding for another degree? And let's even be more plain. Do you know how many MBAs I talk to are out of work right now?
Yep, I know. I hear you. And trust me, I've got a master's. I'm highly educated. I have nothing against education, but I am seeing that the MBA is becoming less and less relevant and it's becoming more and more expensive.
It is. Everything's more expensive. Um, the thing is that being a theoretical practitioner of your skill set is not the same as the person who actually has done the work. Is there prestige behind it? Sure. But does that land you a job? At the end of the day, if you're the person who shows up in the interview, I'm hiring the one who can actually do the work. I could care less if you went to, I don't pick a university, I could name any, but my uncle told me something years ago. He's a wealth manager. He has no college education, but he went out and got all of his financial licenses. And I remember he was telling me a story about how the person who owned the firm he worked for, he said, I would rather have one of you than three people from Harvard. He said, you have the grit and the motivation and the tenacity to succeed. My uncle ended up buying that firm from him.
Wow.
No college education, none
The
whatsoever.
tenacity for me every time. It's the grit, it's the determination, it's the drive, it's the intangibles, right? The purpose, the intention behind it that keeps the sustained performance. So those are things that I think are becoming more relevant, at least to business owners, where you can't just hide in numbers and companies getting flatter, right? So I want to ask you this question about recruiters.
Sure.
Because every time I talk to an executive that hasn't done a job search in like a decade,
Yeah.
they're used to, relying on other people to do their heavy lifting. They're like, you know what? I just need a headhunter. I just need a good headhunter right now. Let's talk about that because there's a big misperception with many executives that recruiters actually work for them.
Yeah. I will tell you about my first day on the job working at Robert Half. Shout out to my Robert Half homies, because
I
they do
bet.
they do have grit and perseverance. But I will say this: I used to, perhaps like the people you're referring to, but I personally used to think recruiters and the like, there was a place where you would go and people had jobs readily available for you. You were in need, you could get a job. Someone was going to get you a job. They're going to look out for you and they're going to get you that job that you wanted, whatever it would be. The first day I walked into that bullpen, I was like, oh, this is not what that is. What it is, just so you, okay, so what I'm talking about is the recruiting agency setting. This is a sales business. What they're selling are job opportunities and human capital or human resources, if you will, not HR specifically, but people doing work, either on lend or direct hire, as that they say, and they charge a fee for all these scenarios. The way that recruiters have opportunities for you is they have spent time smiling and dialing hundreds of people a day and a week, hoping that one of those businesses, a decision maker, a hiring manager picks up the phone and says, yes, I do need help. I need to hire XYZ. So they're getting these onesies and twosies unless they're doing high volume hiring. So those are typically for customer service jobs, light industrial, where they need multiple because there's so much turnover, and or they have large call centers or production facilities like Amazon and so forth. But if they don't have that client relationship, they don't have a job. And the other thing that happens in job markets like this, it is also this tale of two job markets. One is recruiting services are very expensive. They're a stopgap. They offer flexibility to the business, but they are also one of those things where they go, no, I can't afford this right now. We're not making as much money. We have to make do with what we have, more with less, which is what everybody is doing. That's why they're laying people off or cutting back on resources or things like that. And they're not going to have as many opportunities as they did when it was a candidate's market and they couldn't find enough people. So they had to use these firms, recruiters, agencies and things like that to try and hire as many people because they're leveraging their relationships. And they only have an opportunity. They have an opportunity. Now, do they have relationships you can leverage? Yes, but they don't work for you. They work for the business who has a job and needs somebody like you. And even if you say, hey, I'm available and I'm a rare commodity, they still have to pick up the phone and call around and find a company that says, yes, I do need that person. So they don't have anything. They don't work for you. They're representing you in a transaction, but they don't work for you. The person who's paying their bills and their fees is the company. So who do you think they report to? It's not you. You're not paying them.
That's one of the toughest pills for a lot of these folks to swallow is that, hey, that you're not writing them a check. They do not work for you and they are not going and spending their day marketing you unless you perfectly match that job description that they happen to have secured to fill, right? And so ultimately, the only one that can own your career is you. And until you own that, you're kind of just in the waiting game, right?
Yeah, and your your leverage is not what you think it is when you are working with a third party. And I'm not trying to give them a bad name. Recruiters have a bad name because one, they treat people like it's a transaction, huge mistake. But they also do that because they're not trained. It's a very much trial by fire, sink or swim.
Yep.
And your success, though there is a human element that you have to master, um, really comes down to the amount of revenue that you generate. So it's still a transaction in that regard. And they still have to sell you. And they can sell you as well as they possibly can. But if you show up and you fall flat in that conversation because you don't know how to articulate what it is you do in a specific way that really shows that you're going to be valuable to them, you know, there's a lot of holes that can be punched in that process.
Yes. And so switching gears, given this chaotic job market and the craziness of navigating it, we now have a huge market for career coaches, right? And so now everyone and their mom or brother is a career coach. And so really, I'd love to hear your take on all these different career products that you're seeing out there. Obviously, Career Evolved, I'm going to speak to that in a minute here, but what's your take on this career coaching market that's starting to blow up right now?
So when I hear career coach, it usually sounds something like this. Someone says, oh, yeah, I'm working with a coach. It's almost the same thing as saying I'm working with a recruiter. Okay, cool. What is it they're going to do for you?
Yep.
Time and time again, this is how it's described. Okay, so they're working on my resume. They're going to update it. They're going to put some SEO. I'm having trouble getting past the AI. It's not a thing. I'm having trouble getting past the ATS. Okay, great. So they're updating a document. What else are they doing? Oh, they're helping me with my cover letter. Okay, great. How many times are they going to do this? Because you're not applying to one job. If you could apply to one job and have a job, you wouldn't go hire a career coach. You'd have already had a job, right? And people are applying to hundreds and sometimes thousands of jobs the longer they're in the job market. Then they're coaching them on behavioral interview questions. Okay, great. So everything you just told me is I'm going to be sending you through the application process with 1,000 other people. And you're going to get seen how? It's not going to happen because their job postings aren't being managed. They don't have the time and the resources. They're talking to people behind closed doors, especially the further up in your career you go for the level of the job. And your resume looks like everybody else who's paying for an AI tool that can do the same thing in a matter of seconds, 50 to 100 times over. So when I hear career coach, I usually hear someone like myself, recruiter, let me update your resume. Let me talk about what it is you're doing and see if I can refine that as much as possible. I think that people like the element of being supported by another human being, but at the end of the day, all they're doing is refining a document to have you get in line to go through the same process that isn't working for thousands, and in California's sake, millions of people. We have more than 6 million people who are unemployed.
I know. And, it's so disappointing for me. And this is exactly why I don't like to classify myself or any of the team members at Career Evolved as a career coach because the people behind the scenes here are C-level executives. We've consulted the top 10% of the country. I've been in this game a decade. And really, if you're really at that higher level, six figure and above, you cannot rely on a resume, a job board, or a cover letter. You need a proven strategy to have more conversations with decision makers. Nothing else matters. Everything else is a distraction. And so that's exactly what we do, and our proven system allows you to do that. So I would invite anyone here to go check out careervault.com and do your research, because we've been in this game a decade, seen it thousands of times. Would love the opportunity to talk to you, and you can book a call with us, and we'll even speak to you for an hour. It's not for everyone. We do cancel half our calls. We want to work with those who are ready to target six figures. And if you don't have the skills, we can't help you. But if you do, and you've got those skills, the value, and you're just struggling to get the attention and actually command that value, then and you're ready to do the work. No one can spoon feed you a job. You've got to own it, right? But if you're ready to do what it takes and pay the price to get in the top 10% of the country, we can absolutely help you. So go check out careervault.com. We are the real deal, and we love to serve and help and get to the truth of what's really holding you back. And no, it's not your age. It's not your resume. It's not all these other things. We will get to the truth. That's one of our talents, is we're able to diagnose on that call, and one way or another leave you better than we found you. And if it is working with us, we'll tell you exactly how. If it's not, you're still going to leave with value and clarity. So I just had to do that plug, because I know there's so many people out there that need our help, that are struggling with everything we're talking about here, and they're just so frustrated. So with that being said, I'm going to leave you with one last question, David.
Sure.
What advice do you have for the struggling job seeker right now that is about to pull their hair out because they just feel like they're invisible?
People need to know who you are. My father told me years ago, he said, okay, you're gonna break into this new space, this new industry. You need to get real comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to shake a lot of hands, meet a lot of people. People have to know who you are in order for you to get that opportunity. They're not going to just reach out into the ether and go, oh my gosh, I should hire him. Where is he? How can I find him? You need to be present. You need to be on the top of people's minds. Those are the people to reach out to. When people are on the top of my mind and I'm hiring, I'm going to them first. I can name a handful of people. If you gave me a profession, I know who I'm calling first. You need to be that person. And there are ways to do that. You need to get in a conversation with them. You need to have a rapport. And more importantly, I'm not talking about meeting the whole world. I'm talking about focusing what it is that you want to do, know who to talk to, start building a relationship with them, and rinse and repeat.
I
But
love
be
it. It's like we
focused.
went full cycle all the way back to like the 60s, where relationships matter again. And that's
They
the main
absolutely do.
thing. I love it.
They absolutely do. Somebody actually said that, like, what they said was, are we going back to 1985? Yeah, people need to know who you are, because what's the difference between you and a piece of paper and another piece of paper? Everybody's qualified on paper, right? What is it that you do? And people need to understand that and I think this is what people are actually missing in the process. I was talking to another executive about this, about their ATS. I said, if you can solve for the humanity being put back into the hiring process, then you've won. This is the way to do it. You can't have that experience without knowing someone, without being a known variable, as somebody who I was networking with said. If I know that you understand what it is that I do, you provide value to me, I provide value to you, you're the person that I'm hiring. It's a much more emotional thing than it is to say, hey, look at everything I've ever done on my resume. Isn't it great? I got 1,000 more just like it. Why am I going to talk to you? Why am I going to hire you? Right? This is about relationships. You need to have strong relationships. And if you're not developing them, you don't know how to do them, you don't know how to talk about yourself and create that rapport, that's where you're lacking. It's not an SEO optimized resume. People are hiring people. They're not hiring resumes.
Absolutely. Relationships matter. Thank you, David. And you have
You're
a
welcome.
gold mine of value. Appreciate it. This is going to help so many people.
Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to answer some questions.
What's the best way people can connect with you?
LinkedIn. That's probably the best place.
LinkedIn, check him out, David Camacho. He is a major thought leader in this space, and we will be continuing to share more value. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Olivia.